Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our moderator, Noah Budnick, Executive Director at Together for Safer Roads, and our esteemed panel.
All right. Good morning, everybody here. Good morning, everybody streaming us live online. It's great to follow Mayor Gordon this morning in Lexington. I was walking around last night, and it's my first visit here. And it was really great to explore the neighborhoods in the university around downtown. And backstage, I said to the mayor, I said, feels like Lexington, it's got good bones. And one thing I learned talking to Melody this morning is that Lexington actually has one of the oldest urban growth boundaries in the nation, which contributes to the communities that are built up inside the city. And what we're here to talk about is how safety on our roads helps to add that life, that great sense of place that's built on the bones of a city like Lexington. That's what Together for Safer Roads really focuses on, is building public-private partnerships with business leaders, with local government, with other nonprofits to accelerate the pace of road safety in communities like Lexington and around the world. So hopefully our conversation will give you ideas about how you can work with us and our colleagues on stage today. We have a great panel. First, we're joined by Sherryl Newman, who's the Director of Link Strategies. She has had an amazing career in Washington, D.C., originally from New York City, a place close to my heart. So it's great to have a fellow New Yorker up here on stage. Sam Stevens is the Executive Director of the AB InBev Foundation, doing work around the world on sustainability, environmental issues, community development. Thanks for being here, Sam. And Melody Flowers, who is the Executive Director of Strategic Analysis and Policy here at the University of Kentucky. So we're going to ground our discussions with a local perspective and really talk about how to influence change that affects people's lives every day. So we're going to have some questions, have a little conversation, and we'll see what sort of questions we get from the audience online. So first, we're just going to start with Melody, and we'll go down the line here. So one thing we think a lot about is revitalizing communities. And we know that it takes a lot. It's a multidisciplinary process. It can involve strategies like job creation, improving public health, social justice, reparations, fighting climate change, and of course, safe roads. And there are cross benefits to these things. From a safer roads perspective, reducing crashes improves public health. It can also help fight climate change. But it's a challenge to break through the silos and create these collaborations. So just hoping from your experience you can talk about how we can break down silos and muster support and resources from different areas of expertise that can really revitalize communities. And if there are any kind of key elements to creating multidisciplinary collaborations that you want to share with us.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me this morning. Being from the University of Kentucky, I'll just start off by touting some of the things that the university is doing. We recently announced a marquee effort on transdisciplinary research and teaching. And that really acknowledges that we need to be training the leaders of tomorrow to do this multidisciplinary work. And we need to have the spaces on our campus that encourage this. So one of our recent projects that I had a hand in leading was the creation of the Cornerstone, which is a mixed-use project that connects downtown and campus that is designed to welcome in community leaders so that they can mix and interact with our students and work in those spaces using design thinking, using multidisciplinary approaches to really tackle some problems that we're seeing here in the community and that other communities around the Commonwealth are having. And so I think it's a strong place for academic institutions like the University of Kentucky to take a leadership role in helping our students understand how to not just be concerned about the problems that we're facing, but how to really solve these issues.
Great. Sam?
That's great. Yeah, well, first, thank you so much, Noah. Thank you to Concordia for hosting this Very exciting panel, and of course to Melody and Sherryl as well for joining. I'm excited to learn from this group. I think from my perspective, running a philanthropy, a corporate philanthropy that sits next to a very large corporation, I think what we recognize as a motivating factor for inspiring collaboration is really focusing on data-driven impact. And I think that when you can do a great job of pulling together the data and letting the numbers demonstrate the power of collaboration, it will motivate people to get more involved. I think historically a lot of groups like to take ownership of messaging, of stories, of impact, and they want to associate their brands with that and not necessarily share that messaging and share that impact with others. But I think what's neat about the work that Together for Safer Roads is doing, to use that as an example, some of the work that we've been honored to partner with them on at the foundation at AB InBev is really looking at improving communities by focusing on safer roads. And you think that's a fairly niche issue, right? But the approach that TSR takes is very collaborative, very comprehensive, very holistic, and very data-driven. And what you see is, if you had just gone in solo and focused on this one singular issue by yourself or with a very narrowly defined partnership, the impact would not be nearly as great as it is by bringing together and taking this holistic approach. And that data shows the power of that collaboration so that partners like AB InBev and the foundation can now be advocates. We can go out and point to this example and say, look at the power that collaboration has had, look at the power that multi-sector approaches have in generating this kind of impact. And so I think it's up to funders and corporate partners to help not only have faith in this approach, but then also be advocates for this approach, because at the end of the day, it's going to be far more effective.
That's great. Thank you, Sam.
So I've spent a good amount of my time in the government sector, and now I work for a strategic communications and community engagement firm. And one of the most important things is that this conversation has to be had across all levels. So it has to happen at the government level because the government is going to do the roads, they're going to pay for that. But then if you bring in the voices of the community, you bring in the voices of the private sector, you bring in the nonprofits and the philanthropy organizations, you make sure that everybody has a seat at the table, because no one knows what they need in their community more than the people that live in that community. And no one knows how to do the funding and help that community like people like yourselves. Information is important, data is important, research is important. You bring all of that together, you have a full and complete conversation. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way that you're going to be able to do this.
Absolutely.
Those are great. And I want to pull a little bit from what each of you said. You talked about intention, Sam talked about data, Sherryl, you talked about community. And I think we live in a data-driven society, and so data is now a foundational element of a lot of the work we do, especially in road safety. And there's a lot of new data that's being made available now that wasn't available even 5 years ago. Things like near-miss data, and every data set allows us to dig deeper into what's actually happening on the ground. But having good data doesn't solve problems, right? It's not that simple. And so again, when it comes back to improving communities, what Sherryl said, it takes folks on the ground. The folks in the community know what's best, and you need intention to bring people together. Community engagement, stakeholder participation are really key to success and to the sustainability of change on the ground. So, what are effective ways to combine data-driven decision-making and community engagement? And please feel free to give some examples of work you've done. I think that would really help. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start with Sherryl this time.
So, our communities are very well informed. They know what they see, they know what they hear, they're living in this environment. And I will give you an example. I'm from Washington, D.C., and in Washington, D.C., we have a lot of intersections and crossroads and all of that. And when you bring the community together, we had a project which was between D.C. and Maryland, and we spent 10 years trying to work through the nuances, because everybody owns a certain part of the road, so you can't just make a decision. But you bring together Maryland, you bring together DC, you bring together the residents who live immediately in that particular area. They want information, they want the data, they want to know what's happening. I've saw crashes. I know that there's got to be some information that you can share with me. And then that helps them to advocate. That helps them to give a real life picture of exactly what's happening. And so government officials and community organizers can sit there and say, okay, I see the numbers, but I also hear what people are saying. And when you build a solution, it's not always going to be driven by what the numbers say, because the numbers are there to lead you into a conversation, but it's the people in the community that have to be able to kind of get you there. And so now what I do at my company at Link Strategic Partners is that we go out into the community and we say, okay, let's have a conversation. Let's bring all of the different players together so that we can all be part of the solution.
Right. I really like that perspective of using the numbers to start the conversation. It's like a way to catalyze engagement. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Very, very well said. I think, and having spent a lot of my adult life in DC, I have a fond appreciation for the challenges of bringing people together and making a difference. And if anybody's never driven in DC, if you love roundabouts, you'll love DC. Yes. I think from my perspective, I'll pick up on that a little bit. I think community engagement is so critical from start to finish in an initiative. I think data is part of it. Data is great at winning people over, but it only gets you so far, to your point, Noah. I think that you have to then create a mass, a groundswell of support from the community level, get that buy-in, generate that passion and that desire and that enthusiasm amongst the people. Because at the end of the day, this project at some point in an official capacity will probably end. Funding will end, partners will pull out. So what's going to happen if you don't have that community buy-in? Right. You're not going to have the impact sustained. We see that time and again from a donor standpoint, domestically and internationally on development projects. If you don't start with working with the community to help them see the value of this project, to help them see the value of this partnership, they're not going to be stewards to carry that work forward after the project ends. So that community engagement, using the data to leverage that in the beginning is so key.
Yeah. I would love to talk about an example that is going on now in Lexington, a fantastic project that we hope will come to fruition. And this really speaks to the connection between road safety and land use planning. And so for any of you not from Lexington, if you haven't driven out Nicholasville Road, you might not have experienced the congestion that can happen there, even in a medium-sized city. But this is one where, going back a few years, a local group here did a study, found out that there are over 17,000 acres of vacant, underused, and underutilized land inside our existing urban services boundary that's ripe for redevelopment, for infill, for a modest amount of densification. We're not going to be DC, we're not going to be New York, and we don't want to be. Lexington is unique and special, and we need to honor that, but there are strategies that work in a city this size. And so some local organizations, government, planning, major stakeholders have gotten together, and we have a project called Imagine Nicholasville Road. And it looks at intersections and safety and redevelopment opportunities and bus rapid transit, which when you say transit in a city like Lexington, people get scared. So the one thing I would add about the data is it's not just the numbers, it's the visualization of that data. What does this look like? What are we saying infill and densification and bus rapid transit look like in Lexington? And so that group did a wonderful job of visuals, of designs, of possibilities that put in people's minds a picture. And when they see that picture, they say, well, I want to live there. That looks good. That looks nice. That helps all of us. And so that is one where there was data and research, visualization, a year's worth of stakeholder involvement, including the university, to where we are to a point that this is slowly moving forward and gaining traction in the community. So yes, that involvement is so important.
That's a great example, and for us transit nerds, when you say bus rapid transit, our antenna go up, and get very excited about more reliable bus service, especially the way gas prices are going right now. You know, a lot of people are looking for ways to save money, and having reliable transit is a great way to do that. And from a safety perspective, transit also, you know, it's this multidisciplinary strategy that improves road safety as well. And I really like that example because, you know, Concordia really is all about public-private partnerships, and that sounds like it was a very successful one. So just to kind of dig into that a little bit more, and to, you know, I'll pass this question down as well, but like, were there key things that helped make that public-private partnership come to fruition?
I think so. So the University of Kentucky, under the leadership of Dr. Capilouto over the last 10 plus years, has really become a leader from an academic perspective in public-private partnerships, using them as a tool to transform our campus and our community. And how we think about it is, I think some people get hung up thinking every single person has to have the exact same goal, and we're all rowing in the same direction. And really what it is you have to be willing, even if you don't have the exact same goal, you have to be willing to help each other achieve those goals. And so another local example that I think epitomizes that was a historic land swap between the city of Lexington and the University of Kentucky. The city had needs for more developable economic development land inside the urban services boundary, and the university had some real pedestrian safety issues on roads running through the middle of our campus. And we were able to negotiate and effect a massive land swap that solved both of our goals. The city now has been able to do recruitment and development on those acres. And we, not without some amount of controversy, but we did visualizations, we brought people along. We've actually shut down one of those roads in the heart of our campus, and we're building a pedestrian mall.
Wow, very exciting.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so when it comes to public-private partnerships, you know, what are some of the key ingredients, Sam?
Yeah, great question. I think briefly, kind of picking up on both of the examples that Sherryl and Melody provided, I think one of the keys to success that I've seen is really understanding why people are at the table to begin with, what they want, you know, what's in it for them, what's going to motivate them to engage in this partnership. So really understanding their hierarchy of needs and their hierarchy of wants, whether it's the community, whether it's the government officials, whether it's the NGOs or the private sector at the table, and bringing everybody together and aligning on that, and then agreeing who's going to play which roles, and understanding and making sure that everybody's needs and wants fit into the equation in some way.
Yeah.
I think, you know, Sam, that's actually a very good point. You know, sometimes when you have these partnerships, there's mistrust. You know, I mean, people are just not sure, why would a private entity want to come in and do this? And, you know, one of the things that we do at Link through our community engagement is to engage private entities that come and say, hey, we want to do something, you know, that has some impact on the community, something that's good. Well, the community is not always receptive. So bringing them together and having that conversation, like Sam was saying, is important, because then you build that trust. And as Melody said, everybody doesn't necessarily come with the same goal, but at least you know that everybody comes with good intentions. And if you feel like everybody comes with good intentions, you're more willing to work through the process. And that's kind of how it works.
That's great, and it sounds like the work at Link is kind of similar to what we try to do at Together for Safer Roads, is sometimes having kind of like an outsider to convene people creates a safe space, and the conversations that come out of that are very productive. You know, one of my favorite anecdotes is we convened a safety meeting that had bike advocates and garbage men at the same table, and afterwards they were both raving about how amazing the conversation was. So we only have a few minutes left, and I do want to get in one question from the audience, and maybe, Sam, I'll start this with you because it is pertinent to the United Nations. And the question is, how does investment in smart transportation align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? You know,
That's a brilliant question. I'll answer it very, very quickly, but I'm glad someone posed that. The SDGs, interestingly enough, are very concerned about road safety. In fact, under SDG 3, you have an indicator, a target, aligned to improving road safety. And in fact, we're happy to say that this is the decade of road safety within the United Nations. And we recognize that without road safety, you impede the ability for other SDGs to be achievable. So you have to start with road safety as a foundational element, as a cross-cutting element throughout the entire 17 SDGs, and in that way, you can be successful long-term.
Great, thanks, Sam. And we have less than a minute left, so I'll just say, Sherryl, if you want to add to that. Or.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, you know, when it comes to this type of conversation and people say roads, okay, well, that's so specific, as you said, and so narrow that I don't have an interest, but you really do, because there is a definite connection to building an infrastructure in a place where you live for all the things you need to do, whether you want to walk, you want to bike, you want to go to the store, you don't have a car, so you need to have that infrastructure, or you do have a car, and that's what you rely on consistently. So bring the conversations to the community, bring the conversations so that they can have a say in what happens. You get buy-in, you get cooperation, and then everybody is on the same page as you move forward.
Awesome.
And just to bring it full circle, you started by saying the good bones of Lexington. The roads, the transportation system, those are our bones. That's what everything else gets built upon, and so it impacts your life every single day, even if you're not thinking about it.
Yep.
Thank you. So I want to, again, thank Sherryl, Sam, Melody. Thank you all. Thank you for the questions, and please feel free to reach out to all of us to continue the conversation.